Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to embark on a journey like no other. Welcome to the Glum Lot Podcast,
your go-to destination for a unique blend of recovery and discovery.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Mark. And in this podcast, we will endeavor to create a safe and uplifting space for our guests and listeners to share their stories with sincerity and a touch of humor.
Remember, we are not a Glum Lot. The Glum Lot Podcast is more than just a source of entertainment. It's a beacon of hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, recovery is possible. Every story we share carries the power to inspire positive change.
So buckle up, get ready to listen, and join us in discovering the strength that lies within every individual's journey. This is the Glum Lot Podcast, where humor meets hope. All right, so here we are on episode number 3. I'm Mark.
I'm Brett.
I'm Mark.
I'm Brett.
Still?
Yeah, still.
I want to be Brett.
Oh, no, you don't.
You'll
understand why in a minute. I'm kind of an asshole.
All right. What have you been thinking about today, then?
Well, I was in a meeting last night. Saw you there. It was great to see you.
Yeah.
Bless their heart, there was a couple people coming back.
Yep, thank God, right?
Yeah, thank God. But, I sat there as they're telling their story, and, they were willing enough to do that. And I sat there, and I was like, man, better them than me.
Well, it sounds a little harsh, but,
it does at first. And, if I was earlier on in the program, I would say, yeah, that is pretty harsh. I mean, that's awful. Better them than me. We're there to help them. And, as I was thinking about that, I was like, I cannot get them sober.
Right.
And if I try and get them sober, I will lose focus on my sobriety, so then I will be completely useless. And, that took a long time for me to come to terms with. When I was younger in the program, I was always, especially after around 6 months, I was like, man, I know the solution. I got it now. So everybody that's new coming in, follow me, right?
Yeah.
Follow me. I know the way.
And you know what, though? Sometimes knowing the way is not enough.
No.
Especially
the way I understood it.
Yeah. I mean, you got to practice the way.
I was definitely on the proverbial pink cloud.
Yeah,
right,
of course.
That they talk about. Yep. And so, naturally, we're excited about that. And anybody that's new, hey, this is great. Like Tony the Tiger.
Right.
Right. But after a while, after I learned and I got to know people and people went out, I was like, people told me, you're going to be stepping over the bodies. And they warned me of that.
So true.
Right.
It is so true.
And I was like, wow, that's even harsh. But It is reality. I have to keep in top condition myself before I can be of use to anybody else.
Right. And so the phrase better them than me is not a fuck you to everybody else. It's more like I can't help anybody if I'm not 100% in.
And I can't save them.
Right. And you can't save them, right?
No, it's all suggested. The things that I experienced are my experiences, and I would hope that as they observe that would be the attraction, right?
Right. Experience, strength, and hope as an example.
Yeah. So I think it's important that we remember that, when they come in, better than me, because, I have to keep myself good. That's all there is to it.
And you know something? The people that came back, I did that 5 times in my first 6 months in the program. So I know what that's like. And I can also say that every time I went out, it was a little bit worse. I felt worse about it because I was learning the truth about myself in AA as I went along. I came back and I raised my hand, and I was ready to do something a little bit different.
All right. So now I've got a question for you.
Okay.
When you ever came back in, did you ever experience the people that were very, very gung-ho in trying to save you?
No. It's funny because it is a mix. There are people that are like, oh, my God, I feel so sorry for you, and I want you to come back, and I'll do anything I can. And there's other people that are like, better you than me.
Yeah.
But they say it in a very harsh way, and it's out of love. And it is out of a sense of trying to be honest with you.
Right.
That if you go out again, you might not come back. So there, and I've heard, back the old timers used to say, don't come around here wasting our time if you're not ready to get sober.
Yeah.
But the number of first-time winners, I believe, is well below 50%.
Oh, yes. And the reason I brought that up was because I noticed, and I experienced it myself. I had people coming up that were very new in the program saying, I'm not that experienced yet, but if you need a temporary sponsor, or there's a great meeting you need to go check out because that's where you're going to get the answer.
And all that's great.
Right. But at the same time, I have noticed that when newbies come in and people get that treatment, they don't come back.
When they get the harsh treatment?
No, when they get the over-the-top, I'm going to save you treatment.
Well, yeah, you don't want to come off cultish.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because there's a little bit of that when you come in anyway. That
I'm
you
not
feel
a prophet,
that way.
right?
Right.
So, better them than me. It is not a bad way to think.
Yeah.
Because that way we can ensure we're working on hours and the attraction is there for the people that
Speaking
want it.
of better them than me, better other people be guests than us.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we are the
should
hosts.
probably introduce
so
our
we
next
have
speaker.
a guest who I think is one of the more amusing guys I've ever met.
Without a doubt.
He is quite a character. He's got some good sobriety. He's always got a good message. And
he's pretty open. He's very open about what he struggles with.
He'll have a good story for the listeners out in podcast land, members of the Glum Lot community. And we'd like to introduce Mike.
Yeah. Welcome, Mike.
All right, Mike. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks. I appreciate you asking me to be here. I'm Mike A. My sobriety date is August 22nd, 2018. I had a pretty unique upbringing in that my mom was a teacher. My father was an engineer at a radio station. And when I was, I think, 2 or 3, my sister was a couple years older than I, and they decided to buy an apple orchard.
Wow. Where?
Upstate New York, outside of Utica.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So it was pretty unique in that it was a very old orchard, fully operating when we took it over. But it had been sold off throughout the years, so there was a big suburban area surrounding it.
Yeah.
So I had, this cool old farmhouse and orchard to play on, surrounded by, neighborhoods of my friends and things. So I had a cool upbringing in that I had a lot of freedom to kind of...
And a lot of apples.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a kind of place now where, I see yuppies like you pay,
Eventually we'll talk about how we got sauced.
I think I'm too old to be a yuppie.
They pay exorbitant amounts of money to go and pick apples. And the type of place where I people ask if I want to go apple picking and there's just like PTSD or something. I have no interest in going to pay to pick apples. But it was cool. I had a lot of freedom. The older sister was kind of the golden child. Led a good example, but tough to follow. But I really had a solid upbringing. Very much a mama's boy. My dad had a pretty mean temper, but never laid a hand on me or anything like that. So grew up as an athlete, primarily playing soccer.
Okay.
That was my main love. I was a goalie. And then I went to Empire State Games.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
Summer before my senior year. I thought I was hot shit. But I quickly got called into the coach's office going into my senior year. And they explained that they had a freshman coming up that they wanted to get some playing time. And, don't be surprised if you don't start. And I gave them who I am.
Apparently he
started that soon.
Apparently he did not know who you were.
Which is wild, which only very recently did I realize that he was really just doing for me what I would want a coach to do for my son. I was very much, I wouldn't say I was an a fuck up, but I got away with murder. My mom was a teacher in the school I went to. Virtually anything I did do, I just got brushed under the rug.
Right. You know what they call that nowadays? They call it a nepo baby.
Yeah, very much.
You were the school nepo baby.
Yeah. They tell me now I had a lot of white privilege too. So what are you
You got it all going on.
What are you going to do?
So when does alcohol enter this picture?
So I go to college. I end up kicking footballs my senior year. About a week after this discussion with the soccer coach, the football coach calls, and sets me up with a guy who graduated with my sister, taught me how to kick footballs, and I ended up kicking for the football team my senior year.
Nice.
And football was big in my hometown, so it was my first taste of like the Friday Night Lights,
Right.
which was a real juice to the ego.
Hometown hero.
Hardly, I was the kicker.
Hey.
What was interesting, though, and I noticed it when you got here, that you have a size 10 on one foot and then a size 22 on the other. That's
Right.
impressive.
There was a lot of tight cleats.
No wonder you were chosen.
But so I got a partial scholarship to Marist College, the Marist Red Foxes. Shout out to Coach Purdy, he just recently retired. It was a great experience. My major was in public relations. My mom likes to say I got a BS in BS. There were no real fraternities on campus, so the football house was kind of the place to hang out. Even though I kind of caught a lot of crap from them, they very much protected me from anybody else. So I had a clique very early on. And that's obviously where the drinking came in. There wasn't a lot of drug use in high school. I played lacrosse too, so obviously, there were a few bottle and can drives that I was just barbecued for. But it was mostly alcohol until my junior year. We got hooked up with a random roommate. We needed an extra, and he turned out to be a DJ in New York City at Sound Factory. So he would come back from the weekend.
This is a beautiful turn of events.
What a great guest.
So he would come home from a weekend in the city and with just duffel bags of whatever we wanted. And I don't know how I graduated college. At one point, I walked onto the volleyball team. Didn't play volleyball in high school. It was the one sport I didn't play. But I'm pretty tall and didn't have much to do over the winter. My roommate was a volleyball player, so he said just stand around.
Now, so when you first got into drinking more heavy and whatever drugs you were doing, did you notice that you loved it from the get-go, that it did something for you?
What was the feeling?
So I'm very much a people person by nature. Some would say it's to a fault. It's a personality trait I'm working on. But it would very much exacerbate that. I would have to be the center of attention. I'd be that guy with the lampshade on my head. And it would often only end when I either blacked out or got kicked out or ran out of money. So there were signs early on that I was pretty oblivious to. There is really no history of alcoholism or drug abuse in my family that I know of. So I was pretty oblivious to it. One of the big reasons I went to Marist, I thought I wanted to be in New York City. I thought that's where I wanted to end up. And I took an internship, and within a week in Manhattan was like, oh, no, this is bad. This place will chew me up and spit me out. And I ended up graduating again, I don't know how, cheating my way through college, and moved back home and grew roots. I met a girl. She was a elementary school teacher, so very straight-laced. She drank. We met at a party, but frowned upon my drug use. So that's when it first started getting closeted. And that ended up being my preferred route.
So rather than stop,
oh no, God no,
you just stopped doing it in front of her.
Right.
Okay.
Right, I'll just hide it.
And now, at the time, were you thinking, well, this is not that abnormal?
Yeah.
Or is she just over the top?
It escalated. I'll fast forward a little bit. I was living with a buddy, and I got word that my mom had stage 4 breast cancer. And again, very big mama's boy. I immediately moved home back to the homestead, the orchard, to help out. And when I walked in, I realized that my dining room had been converted into a pharmacy. And my mom, particular weird allergy. She was allergic to any of the enes, so codeine, morphine.
Yep.
And so they set her up with a lot of fun experimental stuff. I was working for an insurance company at the time in a cubicle jungle, and I was taking her fentanyl lollipops. This is before anybody knew anything about fentanyl.
Right.
2007. And there's just a little tab on the end. I'd clip off the end, and I'd sit in my cubicle and just drool on my paperwork. But then I'd go home and, say, oh, I'm going to go do the laundry and help take care of Mom, and fall asleep in the laundry. But everybody's saying, well, look at Mike. He's doing, attaboy.
But he's exhausted because he's helping out his mom.
Well, oh, yeah. Oh, no.
Oh, you must have hitched
Nobody
on to
ever
that.
questioned. And again, nobody ever questioned.
So, but at the time, what was your inner mindset when this was going on?
Oh,
Did you know it was a problem?
bad. Yeah, at that point, I was beating myself up. I can remember making deals with myself. And at this point, I didn't really have much of a higher power. But I would pray to whatever was listening. I won't use tonight if you get Mom's test results good tomorrow.
Right.
And inevitably I would use, and her test results would be bad. And oh my God, it's me. I'm killing her. There was a lot of guilt, which would exacerbate it. And
Did you think during this period about getting help or trying to stop?
no,
So that wasn't even an option for you.
nope. And even later on, I would joke that I don't have a drinking problem. I have a getting caught problem.
Yeah. Well, people always say I don't have a drinking problem. I had a driving problem.
Yeah. And boy, I don't know how I ever escaped all of those clean driving records somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so fast forward, mom passes away, and right before then, when I find out that it's a matter of time, I run off to a buddy of mine's dad as a jeweler. I go and get a ring, and I propose to this girl who's been a rock for me through this. Has no idea what's going on, a little bit maybe, but is cutting me enormous slack.
Right. She realizes you're under a lot of pressure.
Right.
Okay.
So I propose to her. In my mind, I think, I want to show Mom that I'm going to be okay.
Were you looking for a substitute for Mom?
Bingo. So a lot of expensive therapy. Where were you before? Well, all this expensive therapy that I went through to find that out. Yes, 100%. I was looking for
Could
somebody
have cut to the
replace
chase
it.
and just talked to Brad. Yourself a bundle.
There's a lot.
That's what I do.
So yeah. So I get married. Mom passes away. I get married. The marriage doesn't last very long. There's times when she comes home and finds me passed out in the recliner with just boxes of cold medicine, because the internet is a wonderful, terrible thing.
Hey, did she at this point ever try to get you to get
Yes.
help?
Yeah. So at that point is my first introduction to AA. When she starts realizing, oh my God, this really is much worse than you let on. I start going to AA. I start getting a therapist, couples therapist. The therapist actually told me at one point, well, do you think you have a drinking problem or a drug problem? I said, well, it's just drugs. It's just the drugs, clearly. That's what she thinks.
Yeah.
So,
What do you want me to say? Do you want me to say? I'll say whatever you want me to say.
So she's like, well, just try drinking. And we'd sit on the, oh, this is disturbing. We'd sit on the couch and watch Intervention. And
The show Intervention.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and I'd offer to go refill her wine and take, 3 for me and 1 for her.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and,
How
so
ironic. You're watching Intervention during that.
there's a lot of irony.
Well, it was getting help.
I guess.
Yeah. So that marriage ends up in flames, and I end up in rehab.
So let me just back you up for a second.
please.
So you had wandered into the rooms of AA,
Yeah.
and what was your experience like? Did you feel you really didn't need to be there? What happened?
So that's interesting. I did feel like I belonged. Definitely felt like I belonged, but I wasn't there for me. I was very much just there to get to please the wife, to get my dad off my back, to just convince everybody this is okay.
So there's a problem, and you're aware of it. But you think it can be managed.
Yeah.
As long as they think you're okay, you'll be okay.
Yeah, I don't like to give up control, turns out.
Yeah.
And I really, I didn't get involved the way you really should in AA. I didn't find a fellowship. I met some guys I talked to. I think I asked one guy to be my sponsor and never called him again. That type of thing.
Typical.
Yeah.
Half measures.
Right.
Did they avail you nothing?
Very less than nothing.
They went the opposite way.
Yeah. So eventually ended up in rehab. That's where I really kind of had that, like, okay, Mike, this isn't going to go well. Like, you don't have control over this. And it was embarrassing, honestly. I was living such a lie and wearing such masks that I was really afraid that people were going to start to see behind those masks.
I was going to say, did your experience in rehab reveal a lot?
Yeah. And ironically, I was only there for, I think, 5 or 6 days. Insurance came back and said, well, you've never done outpatient and this and that, so get out. We're not paying anymore.
Right.
But it did. It cracked open that shell. I went back, moved in with my father, who at this point I really didn't have a relationship with. Like I said, he was working a full-time job, operating an apple orchard, raising 2 kids who were both crazy into sports. So I tried at that point a little bit to build a relationship there, and he tried, but very much from that older generation where they don't open up like that.
Mark's generation.
Like
now, how old are you at that point? My generation.
Accepted.
So this is probably right around 28, 29.
Okay, so you're not a kid.
No.
You've seen some things.
Right.
You've been through some stuff.
Right. But at the same time, I've always made sure to have a strong woman in place to do everything for me, much like my father. And now I'm in a house with him, and it's 2 grown men that can't tie their shoes. So he tried, but I fought it, and I isolated very much. And eventually he got to the point he couldn't watch me anymore, and he dropped me off.
Watch you what?
Watch me just totally isolate and waste away. He made many attempts to try and get me back into AA. He reached out to the guys that I had contact with in AA, and they tried to reach out. But eventually, he dropped me on the steps of the Addiction Crisis Center.
So he saw you deteriorating.
Yeah.
And nothing he was doing was helping.
Right.
And he saw you getting worse, and he was thinking, all right, there's nothing I can do, obviously, but this kid needs help. So what can I really do?
Right.
Give him to some people who this is what they do.
Right.
So
yeah. And the best thing...
Pretty good thing to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A little tough love.
Right.
It would seem at the time, probably.
Which, again, I'm 29 years old and had not received to that point.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So it was exactly what I needed. And that was where I met a pastor, in air quotes. And he said something to me that was just what I had needed, because to that point, I grew up Catholic. I went through communion. I got my confirmation and all that. But I had this very angry God. And I was pissed at him for taking my mother, who in my eyes was an angel. And I couldn't see.
Because he let you down?
I guess I wanted to see what kind of plan could take this woman out in her prime. She had just retired. She was, her funeral was around the corner blocks, a high school teacher. It was amazing, but brutal. So anyway, this pastor says to me, religion is for people that are afraid of hell, and spirituality is for people that have already been there. And that is just what I needed to hear at that time. Because I very much felt like I was in hell. How could this be any worse? Look at me.
And so that distinction let you know that what you had experienced growing up in the Catholic Church was religion. And your answer was not necessarily going to be religion, but maybe spirituality or spirituality through religion. So
And
you
that
needed
there's a
something
difference.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, at that point, I don't even know that I thought there was a difference. I just, okay, I'm opening a crack here. Let's let some light in. What can we shine this light on? And there happened to be a Bible there. Okay, let's get started here. I mean, come to find out, it was an establishment run through the rescue mission. So, not ironic that there was a Bible there.
Right.
So, but I end up at my second rehab at Conifer Park and do a full 28 days there.
What was your experience like at your second one? And was it a lot different than the first experience?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. You're good at this.
Well,
Don't let it go to your head.
that's why I get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, so my first couple of days there, I walked in trying to run for mayor of rehab.
Oh, no way. I'm surprised.
And
You're not even the first.
Nope.
This is episode number 3.
Yeah.
You're not even our first guest that had said that. Because this is, what's funny at fucking rehab?
yeah.
Everybody does that, except for there's some people that will clam up and not say a word. They don't want to participate.
Yeah.
And some people like probably the 3 of us, walk in and we're like, hey, I'm here about
Making
what's
friends,
up?
man.
How can I help? We want to be number 1.
Look at me.
I think that's part of the cover-up.
We're going to
though.
put a pin in that because I have a bet that I can top his story. But anyway,
Okay.
So this counselor pulls me aside and says, Mike, what the hell are you doing here? Are you here to make friends or are you here to get better? It was, again, somebody put in my place that told me what I needed to hear, and I was at a place where I was open to hear it. So I started working on myself, finally, and got to work on, some of what was going on inside and giving up that control, surrendering, admitting that my life was pretty unmanageable, that lying to your ex-wife that the bottle of tequila in the man cave drop ceiling must have been left by the 70-year-old woman we bought the house
Oh, my
from.
gosh, I did that. I did that.
So
Also did that with Playboy.
I'll tell you, if you want to know something about someone, just walk in their house and look in the drop ceiling. You're
Or work at attic
You're going to
entrances.
find out
Oh, yeah.
everything. I mean, hopefully there's not a body there, but that it is very revealing. So you're in this rehab and you're working. You're starting to work a program. You're taking a look at the steps. You're starting to find out like this. I need a bigger change than I thought I did.
right.
So what happens?
So I moved back in with Dad. I get out of rehab. Dad takes me back in.
Oh, you graduated?
I got my graduation, and I started really giving AA a shot. I built a fellowship. I got a real sponsor. I started working the steps, going through the big book with a sponsor, like amazing, like all these things they tell us we should be doing from the beginning. I finally started to try. And then I got a Facebook message from a young woman I met in the first rehab.
Your first 5-day stint?
Here's the pin. We'll fast forward a little bit, but my sponsors told me she needed help moving a mattress, and he said,
I've heard that before.
you can help her move it, but you better not lay on it.
I was going to say, how was it moving? Was it moving up and down, or what are we?
So, yep, I had a rehab romance. I got a second wife. And
you ended up marrying her?
we got married. I was blessed with a child shortly after meeting her. And ironically, that same pastor that told me about religion and spirituality also told a story about he was visited by a premonition that the next woman he slept with would father his child. And that's when I was like, okay, this guy's nuts. Hey, this guy.
But that is really common, though, when we're in, like, rehab or even in the rooms that happens, because when we're vulnerable, that's attractive to people, and all of a sudden
You know
we're
what
very
a lot of it
comfortable with each
is
other.
it's a quick substitute for that little bit of nudge to feel better.
And
that's why the 13th step is
Right.
to be avoided.
And I still didn't have anybody to tie my shoes for me.
Oh, well, there you go.
So-
You need that.
Had to get that
I
done.
had to find somebody.
Yeah. Eventually, you learn to tie your own shoes, I'm sure.
They're tied now.
Or do you
Wait
got-
for
but-
that part, Mark. We got to wait for
Well,
it. It's coming
Spoiler alert.
I think he's got Velcro.
on that size
So-
22.
So, anyways, there you are. You've gotten out of rehab. You've got into the fellowship. You meet this woman. You have a child.
Yep. And I move out. Excuse me. So she's, again, this is out back home. I'm in Utica. She's out here in Syracuse. I move out here to Syracuse. And I dip my toe in AA again. And I convinced myself, well, it's just a little different. They're not doing it the same as they were out in Utica. And man, they just do it so good back in Utica. Those good old boys. I need my old timers.
They did it with red pepper flakes.
They did. And I again, it's just my disease telling me, giving me an excuse.
Right.
But again, I said the three scariest words an alcoholic can say, I got this.
Yes. You're done when you say that.
Yep.
Toast.
And
As soon as you got this, you don't got this.
yeah. And I rely very much on my wife and the fact that we have now these two beautiful children. And I do a pretty good job white knuckling it, but I realize looking back now, I found another substitution, money.
So at this point, are you not going to meetings?
Nope.
But you're not
Done
drinking
with AA.
either.
I'm not drinking. I'm not drinking because I know I have a problem. And I know that if I want to stand any chance, I cannot drink, but I think I just don't need AA.
Okay.
Willpower.
Yeah. I can't, again, control too. I just didn't want to surrender and accept that I had no control. So it went pretty well. But again, I found a new love of money. I got into sales, went through the typical sales route, and eventually ended up in finance. Wound up in a home that was better than I deserved. So I have a total of 4 children. I have a 16-year-old stepson from her first marriage. I have now 12. His birthday was yesterday. 12-year-old son, and a about to be 10-year-old daughter. We also have an adopted, soon-to-be 6-year-old. This is where she comes into the picture. So, my wife's cousin is a heroin addict. Was in jail, luckily, while she was pregnant. Gives birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl. Gets out of jail. Within a matter of a few weeks, overdoses with the baby in the halfway house.
Damn.
They revive her, thank God, but immediately take the baby and hand her over to us. They put a neglect charge on her. She signs over guardianship and skips town. So another baby.
Big house,
Surprise!
lots of kids.
And
good
again,
career.
at this time, my wife is doing daycare out of the house. We have the room. We have the love. We're happy to do it. And she is an absolute blessing. She's a peach. But it's about this time where I am at the wrong place at the wrong time, working for the wrong people in an industry where it's very much work hard, play hard.
Oh, yeah.
And the right substance was put in front of me at the wrong time, and I was off to the races.
Right. You were defenseless.
Right. Oh,
You were
absolutely.
defenseless.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very much. Very much. And when they say you pick up where you left off, what they don't mention is technology progresses. So, yeah, your addiction picks up, but there's been wild advancements in narcotics and all sorts of things. So it was fast and it was scary. But I knew I wasn't going to stop unless I got caught, which sucked.
Right.
And eventually I did. I thought she was going to leave me. Luckily, she decided not to. She's going to give me another chance. I moved back in. And that's when I come back to AA. That was August 22nd.
How'd you get caught?
Oh, that's
Come on.
bad. It's ugly. We're at her mother's house. Her mother lives up in the woods up north, and she found a dog walker, and confronted me. And her stepfather has all sorts of.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah,
The fuck is a dog walker?
That's what I'm talking
I have
about.
never heard this
That's
before.
what I'm talking about.
What is a dog walker?
Like a little one hitter.
Oh.
Like marijuana?
Yeah. Yes.
Like Mary Jane?
Mary Jane.
Grass?
Marijuana?
You're
A dog
smoking the-
walker. Ladies and
Jeez,
gentlemen out in
Satan's
Glum Lot
tobacco?
land.
Yeah, she found my dog walker.
Dog walker. I thought it was going to be a woman that walks your dog at your
That was right there. I was
No, she never found those.
weird turn. That's how you got caught.
She found my dog walker.
Never found
Wink,
them.
wink.
That-
So I'm sorry.
That
Go
didn't come
ahead.
up in a
Continue.
ninth step either.
It was a mystery to me, but go ahead.
So that's when I'm like, okay, yep, I'm caught. I admit it. I'm powerless. It is unmanageable. I will go to AA. I will do whatever I need to.
And you had that AA in your head already.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. And there was a lot of a head full of AA and a belly full of booze.
Yep.
There was a lot of that going on.
Now,
Yeah, brutal.
were you drinking at this time too?
A little
or
bit.
just marijuana? Brett and I were just talking about the
Yeah.
marijuana maintenance thing.
Yeah, no bueno.
Yeah. No bueno.
I limited my drinking because, again, I was telling myself, well, that's the problem.
Right. And the other things were justified.
Yeah. But I was blowing off appointments. I was walking over. I was missing,
The unmanageability was becoming glaring.
Very
absolutely. It was clear, whatever it was, whatever mind-altering substance that I was going to use to escape from how I actually felt, I was going to abuse because I did not want to feel how I felt.
Yep.
So I got into AA, got a real sponsor, got a real fellowship. It was a bit of an atypical program in that their primary focus was 12-stepping guys, getting a newcomer, finding a newcomer and helping them into the program, getting them to their next appointment. I can see some of the benefits behind that I'm very much a selfish and self-centered individual. So anything that can be done to get me out of thinking of only about myself is for the better.
Now, when you say that was this a particular group that you went to that was like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I know the different AA groups
Sort of.
do different things.
Yeah, it was an offshoot of there's a notorious group in town, and it was an offshoot of that. And they're commonly referred to as 12-step meetings, where their primary goal is to find a newcomer, get them into the program, get them into AA, get them into talking to other people.
Now, did you like that? Only because you said in the past that you were looking for somebody
Good
to
point.
help you through life.
Well, you're not bad at this either there.
Just wondering.
It's rubbing off. No, so I'll fast forward a little bit. It kept me sober. What I'll say is it kept me sober through some difficult times. But shortly, I was about 2 years sober when the second wife and I finally said, all right, this just is not working. She had thrown the divorce word around from the jump. And I finally said,
What do you
okay.
attribute that to?
Right, now, at this point, you've got
Yeah.
some sobriety.
Yeah. So
Were you gone a lot?
it was a lot of the financial stressors. I was still chasing money at that time. So I'm a financial advisor. I'm on the road 40 to 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
She's doing daycare out of the house. So she's only leaving the house maybe 2 hours a week to go grocery shopping. God bless her. And this is right around the pandemic too.
Okay.
So
Stressful times.
yeah. So it was actually right beforehand. So she throws the divorce word around, and I'm finally like, okay, I'm out. I move out. I call my sponsor at the time, and he goes, Mike, this is probably the first time in 6 months that you mentioned her name to me. You think maybe any of this could have been prevented? And he was right. I wasn't talking about me because I was only worried about, because that's all they worried about was who are you helping? So shortly thereafter, my father passes away. And it was, again, it was during COVID. He was in Florida. It ended up very much, it's hard to say this, it ended up being a blessing given the circumstances. He, a week beforehand, told my aunt that his favorite place on the planet was on his back porch in his lazy boy. That's where they found him.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a good way to go out.
Heck yeah.
Right. It wasn't in an ICU alone during COVID. But again, I'm already dealing with
Another
this from
jarring
her. I got
thing.
that coming. And then my job says, this cushy contract that you have that's only available in New York. Well, the number crunchers during COVID decided that contract's going away, and your contract's going to be just like everybody else in the country, and take it or leave it.
And it was a big cut.
It was different.
Okay.
It was different. It would involve a lot more work on Mike's part, which didn't sound good to Mike. And I didn't love what I did. I very much felt like I fell kind of ass backwards into this career, strictly for the love of money, because this was the best route to make the easiest money. And I was good at it, and I felt like I provided a good service to these people, but at the end of the day, I was chasing the holy dollar.
Different addiction.
Yeah, boy, isn't it? When I look back on my life, I see these little bits of just always trying to feel good by doing something else. You know what I mean? And it always involves more.
Oh, yeah.
Excess.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And instant gratification.
And it's a chase. You're chasing.
Ooh, instant gratification.
Yeah. I
So
want it now.
at some point during this time, what happened?
So I I was at this breaking point, and I was somebody who said I don't have a drinking problem, I have a getting caught problem. I went from this 3,500 square foot McMansion in the suburbs to this little 2-bedroom apartment, and the only people that are going to catch me is this fish tank over here, and they're not talking. So I knew I was in trouble, and ironically, I can't even take credit for this because I try not to take credit. I do take a lot of credit, but I try not to. My higher power put me into a position where the sponsor that I had at the time with this 12-step program passed me off onto his sponsor. It was no hard feelings. He had too many pigeons and felt like I could be better served by this guy who is very well respected in the area. I have a lot of respect for him. However, I could not surrender to this guy. I don't know what it is about him. Again, like I said, I love him. I talk to him now with things that I go to him with things.
But the personality just wasn't there.
It was I couldn't surrender to him, whatever it was.
Right.
And I finally asked the gentleman who's my sponsor now, Bobby T, to be my sponsor. And he is very much a traditional AA. He sat down with me the next night, and we went through the big book page by page. I read a page, he read a page, and it was the way he was shown by his sponsor. And as we went through it, we began working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know without a fraction of a doubt, if I did not begin working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would have drank.
So all along the way, it sounds like your higher power kept putting things in your path. Whether you took them or not was
with
a
a
choice.
friggin' sledgehammer.
Right,
He's
right.
hitting me over the head.
Right.
And
But still, right?
And to this day, it's something I struggle with. I very much move at the pace of pain. It's a character defect that I'm working on. So yeah, it was just finally to a point where I couldn't avoid it anymore. And thank God it got me to and now I'm in this position where I'm unemployed and very much in a midlife crisis.
Oh. How old are you?
42.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard
you're
for me
right
to
about
spit
there.
that.
You look younger.
I like to call it now a midlife pause.
Yes.
Notice the red station wagon in the driveway.
Okay.
Not a red sports car. But it was a blessing because it gave me a chance to really work on myself.
So do you think the catalyst was this time actually reading through the big book with somebody?
Yep.
Because it was very much for me. That was my big moment. I had too gone through things, but it wasn't until then. know, that I had that person. And I like how you said that they had you would alternate pages, because that gives opportunities for each person to relate and tell their story as you go along.
Absolutely.
And that was huge to me.
Yep. And we did a lot of that. We did a lot of relating. He would tell me bits of his story as we would go through it, and I would, bring up things and ask him questions. It was the first time that I had somebody, and I had been to big book studies and things like that, but it was the first time really rolling my sleeves up and digging into the big book with somebody. And it was somebody that...
and it all of a sudden makes sense, too, because I tried reading it before, and it was like reading the King James Bible, right? It was a little wonky in the wording and stuff, and a little bit above my brain capacity. But,
Yeah. So it's been very eye-opening for me to go through those steps and have an opportunity where I could take the time and have the freedom and the flexibility. Now, I will say I very much I hid in AA a little bit during that time. I would wake up, play golf with a couple of AA buddies, go to AA, have dinner with some AA buddies, and rinse and repeat.
But that's what kept you sober.
Nothing wrong
right?
with that.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that's all we can do one day at a time is to just not drink.
Right.
And slowly and perceptibly, things start to change.
Right.
We start to turn a little bit, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's like you reach some kind of understanding where you can go out into the world and do things and remain sober and remain connected.
Totally. And that was pointed out to me a lot. Sometimes just a day without a drink. That's all.
Right.
That's all we're given.
Yep.
And that's got to be enough.
And you're playing golf.
Yeah, right. Not very well.
So, to me, it sounds like you got sober, A, in spite of yourself, like most of us, B, in fits and starts and stages, but eventually you got there.
Yeah. And to tie a nice little bow on it, I'm now, so I work for the county. I work for the Office for the Aging. And I joke with some of my fellowship that I'm sitting not literally, but virtually at the same dining room tables across from the same type of clients. And I have zero financial incentive to be there except to help.
Right.
To be of service.
And isn't that interesting? We hear this time and time again. Somebody went from very selfish, behaviors, trying to get all this wealth, all these things that we think makes us full.
Right.
And now you're doing the opposite.
Right.
And feeling full.
Right. Yeah. Doesn't that tie into the whole beyond your wildest dreams?
Yes.
Because we don't even, like Brett and I were talking about this before, our wildest dreams, like we don't know what's beyond them.
Right.
Until we see it.
Right.
And it usually involves living an honest life, helping other people, all these things we didn't put much value on before that now we see as the most valuable.
Because we were willing to open our eyes.
A relationship with a higher power.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you try to talk to me about a higher power, when I first came into AA, that was probably one of the things that did push me away.
You're the higher power.
In my mind, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's been great having you here and hearing your story, and it's very inspirational.
That flew by.
And so thanks a lot for coming. And
My pleasure.
Glum Lot community thanks you.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you right there and just
Go ahead.
say I think this is awesome that you guys are doing this. I mentioned, to Brett, it's last thing we need today is another podcast, right? But this is very much a thing that anybody who knows me in AA knows that I am the opposite of glum. And I think that is...
We are not a glum lot.
That is extremely important. And to get that message out, to get the message of recovery, of hope, and of everything out there, I think that's huge. I am truly blessed and honored that you guys thought of me. I don't know why. It makes me question you a little bit. But
because you're not a glum lot. You're not a glum dude.
I'm going to go play with my RC planes after this.
All right, thank you. Hey, so I'm Mark.
I'm Brett.
I'm Mike.
As we wrap up another episode of the Glum Lot Podcast, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you who tuned in today. Navigating the path to recovery from alcohol and other substances is a journey filled with challenges, triumphs, and self-discovery. Remember, we're not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're here to provide a safe space for open conversations about the complexities of recovery. Your stories, courage, and resilience inspire us and our listeners alike. If you or someone you know is on the transformative journey, know that you're not alone. Join us next time as we continue to explore the diverse facets of recovery. Until then, stay strong, stay connected, and remember that each day is a step towards a brighter, sober tomorrow. Thank you for being part of the Glum Lot community.